Hi, my name is Michaela Lathrop, and today I'm going to be presenting on sextortion and image-based sexual abuse, and this is for my victimology course. All right, so what is image-based sexual abuse? So image-based sexual abuse, also known as IBSA, is the taking, distributing, and or making of threats to distribute a nude or sexual image without a person's consent. And it is an increasing issue that typically involves three key behaviors. So the non-consensual taking or creating of the image, the non-consensual sharing or distribution of the image, and any threats made in that timeline to distribute or create an image. IBSA is a form of violence that is perpetrated through technological means. So as increases in technology have occurred, increases in this crime have occurred, and they have only recently become the focus of more studies. And IBSA is often viewed as a multidimensional construct, which is an umbrella term, and IBSA includes upskirting, which is taking pictures of somebody non-consensually under their clothes, revenge pornography, and sextortion. What is sextortion? Now, sextortion blends together the words sexual and extortion to create a term that addresses the act of making threats to share nude or sexual images to coerce a victim into complying with certain behavioral or financial demands. So sexual extortion, essentially. And it is a prevalent form of coercion that does fall under the IBSA umbrella, and it has become increasingly common. Sextortion is complex and can be perpetrated by a variety of offenders, maybe known, maybe unknown to the victim themselves. And that increases the risk and opportunity for victimization. And sextortion opens the door for coercion, which typically commences through online communication. And unfortunately, a lot of victims who are victims of extortion and sextortion were blackmailed with the use of their own images. So images that they took on their own and sent or didn't send or were retrieved by somebody else and then used against them. So some statistics regarding sextortion, 45% of perpetrators carried out their threats. So the threats are a very real indicator that somebody is going to go through with it. 60% knew perpetrators before the threats. So as mentioned before, perpetrators can be known or unknown, and both are frequent. And 40% met perpetrators online, as I mentioned. The increase in technology and the increase in access to technologies create a higher risk for this type of victimization. The prevalence of victimization and perpetration. So results regarding prevalence of IBSA have been determined through comparisons of multiple different research that has been conducted within many different studies. And according to one study, perpetration rates for the non-consensual distribution of intimate images appears to range from 5.12% to 16.37%, whereas rates of victimization range between 8 and 28.5%. Rates of IBSA and sextortion victimization regarding gender have been found to be conflicting. Some studies say that victimization is a lot higher among women, whereas others say that IBSA victimizations can involve both males and female counterparts in a very similar rate. The significance of victimization. So empirical research regarding the significance and consequences of IBSA is pretty bleak, though this form of victimization is gaining traction and attention in society today. The increase in technology has made it increasingly common, and studies are catching up to that. According to one study, severe emotional and psychological distress, including fear, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, are significant effects that victims often experience. And the authors from that same study claim that repercussions such as bullying, ostracization, and victim blaming further exacerbate these impacts. A lot of the time with IBSA and sextortion, the fault comes back to the victim for a multitude of reasons. One of them being that typically it is their own image that they created on their own, of their own free will most of the time, that is being used against them, but that doesn't make it any different, and they are still a victim. A lot of victims also report being forced to switch schools, and they typically lose their job due to resulting effects of this victimization, whether that be embarrassment on their own part due to victim blaming or the way that others around them handled this situation, or whether their company or whoever they work for think or believe that this happening to them will tarnish their company's reputation and credibility. Okay, regarding the risk and protective factors of sextortion and IBSA, gender, higher rates of perpetration are reported among men, whereas higher rates of victimization are reported among women. Regarding age, both higher rates of perpetration and victimization are reported amongst younger adults, which does correlate to the increase in use of technology regarding younger generations and their easier access to it. Regarding race and ethnicity, minority groups are more likely to admit to engaging in non-consensual taking, sharing of intimate images, or threatening to share intimate images, and victimization is also more likely for these minority groups. Regarding sexual orientation, similarly to race and ethnicity, minority groups are also more likely to admit to victimizing and to being victims of and to being perpetrators of sextortion and IBSA. Okay, so a victim services survival kit. Some of the things that I believe would be most important for a victim of IBSA or sextortion. The first thing I have is a legal scale, and I believe that it's crucial for victims of IBSA and sextortion to have access to legal resources that will properly handle their case. A lot of the time, these cases are dismissed because there's not enough evidence, or the victim is shamed into not taking action. But it's very important for these victims to have access to legal services so that they can get the justice that they deserve. Secondly, I have a speech bubble with hearts, and I believe that IBSA victims deserve to have access to trauma-informed counseling services. The lasting trauma that victims of IBSA suffer from is a lot larger than most people could even imagine. They oftentimes struggle with anxiety and depression, which is often overlooked in their cases, and both can be very dangerous and debilitating to the victim's health. So I believe that they need access to counseling and therapy services so that their needs can be properly addressed. All right, the third thing I've included on the Victim Services Survival Kit is an image of two people holding hands. I believe that victims of IBSA and sextortion should have access to support groups with others who underwent similar victimizations. I believe that this would be very beneficial to their healing process to share stories and experiences and understanding of the same situations or similar situations. And I believe that this, on top of the aforementioned access to therapy and counseling, would be fabulous. Fourth, I believe that post-victimization, victims shouldn't be forced to live with the inappropriate images of themselves online that were shared against their will and have caused them so much trauma. I believe that these images should be removed immediately from any platforms that they may have touched, and all traces of the content should be forcefully and rapidly removed. I believe that if these images and videos or whatever had been shared continues to spread, it not only worsens the victimization, but it continues it for who knows how long, and the victim does not deserve that. Next, I have a megaphone, and though IBSA has just recently become a topic of more interest in research studies, and isn't the most well-known form of victimization, I believe that because of this, it would be extremely beneficial for awareness to be spread via victims, friends, family members of victims. If awareness is spread regarding IBSA, sextortion, and the variety of cyber abusive sexual crimes that fall under that umbrella, it will help victims to feel more seen, heard, and assist in their healing process. All right, finally, I have cash. And while it is important for IBSA victims to pursue legal action and spread awareness of their victimization and be allowed access to counseling services post-victimization, I believe it's also very crucial for them to receive financial compensation and as well as job security. Victims are often fired or choose to leave their job of their own fruition following an incident like this, and services such as therapy, counseling, legal assistance, like they're all very costly, and I believe that these victims deserve compensation for the trauma that they went through to assist in them getting the help that they need to recover and receive justice. All right, so a case study that reflects an example of IBSA follows a girl named Anna who returned to school post-COVID-19 lockdown and post breaking up with her boyfriend Jason to find that he had released images of her that she had sent to him. So in the year prior to this lockdown, Anna, who was only in 10th grade, had started a relationship with Jason, and she grew to trust him and care for him. And Jason eventually began to pressure Anna for inappropriate sexual pictures. After constant nagging, Anna agreed to send pictures, and Jason would consistently deem each picture inadequate and ask for more. It was never enough. And Anna eventually became exhausted with this behavior and perpetual harassment on Jason's part, and she chose to break off the relationship, blocking him on all platforms. Anna's pictures then began to circulate around her high school as well as other high schools in the area. School administrators at her school had even been privy to the knowledge that these pictures were circulating before Anna even knew, and no one chose to address it. She was eventually confronted by her school counselor, but her counselor shamed her, saying that she was distributing nude images as if it was her own fault, her own doing. Other parents of other students who had seen the images were calling the school essentially victim blaming her. Anna and her parents did choose to go to the police, and they were hoping that they would pursue action and Jason and his friends would get in trouble as they deserved to. Unfortunately, though, the police did want to pursue action and teach the boys a lesson. They were unable to because of limited evidence. Immediately after they had been caught, Jason, his friends, they all deleted these images off of their personal devices, so there was no longer a tie to the spread of the images of Anna. Anna was warned by the police that she could choose to pursue the case with the limited evidence. However, if she had any hope of winning, she would need somebody who had seen the image firsthand to testify, and unfortunately she knew that that was not going to happen. The police also knew that that wasn't going to happen, and they advised Anna to drop the case because most victims in these situations end up being heavily blamed and go through a lot of trauma in the courtroom. So Anna did choose to drop the case. However, the repercussions of Jason's act did continue to follow her. Anna was forced to continue seeing him in class, and even when she requested to transfer out of classes so she didn't have to see him, her school denied that request. So she was forced to see him in close proximity every day. She began to suffer from anxiety, panic attacks, and sleeping disorders that continued. And she was later denied the opportunity to run for school captain, and she was continuously punished by her school for something that wasn't even her own fault. So, analyzing the system's response, the police did attempt to properly handle Anna's case. However, they did fail her. Though they wanted to pursue action, they did not try very hard upon realizing that Jason and his friends had attempted to remove the evidence and had separated themselves from the case. And immediately after they realized the case would be trickier than they had originally thought, they encouraged Anna to drop it and no longer supported her. The school definitely failed Anna. Anna's school chose to blame her for the spread of the inappropriate images. They listened to criticism from others, outside parents, students, and they denied her the ability to switch classes, even knowing what she had been through. They denied her the ability to run for school captain under false pretenses that she had too many uniform infringements, when in reality it was just another effect of Jason's actions. Both of these systems, school and police, failed Anna. Neither of them gave her the justice that she deserved or the support system that she deserved. And because of that, a trauma-informed response plan that would be beneficial would include a supportive school resource for victims of IBSA or similar cyber abuse crimes, beneficial assistance from law enforcement and legal teams, and counseling or therapy services that are immediately offered to the victim. According to a study, findings underscore the need for a trauma-informed, legally responsive framework that acknowledges the severity of digital sexual abuse. They argue that psychological assessment, victim support, and legal decision-making must reflect the complex harm inflicted by IBSA. So it is crucial for victims in school systems with their abuser to have a resource within their school to help address the situation. It is important that IBSA cases that are often overlooked, underreported, and dismissed hold abusers legally accountable for their actions, and legal action is taken no matter the amount of evidence. And it is important that victims of IBSA have access to counseling and therapy post-victimization, because they do undergo severe trauma that is often dismissed and replaced by victim blaming and additional guilt. So an interesting statistic that was found in a 2020 survey of people across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK showed that 45.3% experienced one or more forms of the above abuse. Images taken without consent, images shared without consent, and images threatened to be shared. So IBSA is a problem, and many people do suffer from this victimization, which is why it is such an issue that the response system is so harmful to victims. All right, so in this class, I have learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed learning about victimization, the different types of victimizations, different true stories. Throughout the course, my understanding has definitely expanded. It's opened my eyes to the multitude of ways that an individual can suffer victimizations and what appropriate and inappropriate responses to those victimizations are. I've learned that crimes are much more complex than their initial acts, which is often all you learn about in other CrimJ classes. And victims are often left to suffer the consequences of their abusers' or perpetrators' actions and are unsupported by peers and the legal system. And my thinking was constantly challenged by the case studies addressed within the different units as they applied the information we were taught to real-life examples. especially those regarding intimate partner violence, sexual assaults, and IBSA. I had no idea how many acts fell under the umbrella of IBSA and sexual assault, and I am inspired to continue to spread awareness for these issues. This class has encouraged me to grasp a deeper understanding of victimizations, and it has made me even more appreciative of those who work every day to advocate for the victim justice and support systems. While I'm still not sure what exactly I want to do career-wise in the future, I do want to make a positive impact in the criminal justice field, and after learning so much about victims, I would not be opposed to a career in victim support. And those are my references.